Sarah Cooper's story is one that resonates with many. She is 34 years old, living in Portland, Oregon, a city known for its lush green spaces and vibrant culture. Sarah works as an elementary school teacher, a role that she feels passionately about, yet one that also comes with its own set of challenges. She wakes up every morning, determined to make a difference in the lives of her students, many of whom come from underserved backgrounds. Her dedication to her job has earned her the admiration of her colleagues, and to those who know her superficially, she seems to have it all figured out. But behind this facade lies a much different reality. For years, Sarah has been silently battling anxiety, a constant, unrelenting hum in the background of her life. It started in her teenage years, with occasional feelings of unease, but over time, it grew into something much larger. By the time she reached her late 20s, anxiety had become an unwelcome companion, dictating her choices, actions, and even her relationships. The mornings were the worst. Before her alarm clock even buzzed, she would find herself wide awake, her heart pounding as she thought about the tasks ahead. Teaching, which once filled her with joy, now often left her feeling overwhelmed and inadequate. Sarah's anxiety wasn't limited to her work life. It seeped into her personal relationships as well. She found herself canceling plans with friends, avoiding social gatherings, and spending weekends alone, binge-watching shows in an attempt to distract herself from her racing thoughts. Deep down, she feared judgment and rejection, even from the people who cared about her the most. Over time, this isolation began to take its toll, leaving her feeling disconnected and misunderstood. One of Sarah's most significant struggles was her inability to identify the root cause of her anxiety. She often wondered, why do I feel this way? Why can't I just relax like everyone else? These questions plagued her, but the answers always felt just out of reach. She tried to power through on her own, believing that asking for help would make her seem weak. She read countless self-help books, downloaded meditation apps, and even tried cutting out caffeine, but nothing seemed to make a lasting difference. The tipping point came at a friend's wedding. Sarah had been looking forward to the event for months, but when the day arrived, she found herself paralyzed by the thought of being in a crowded room full of people. As she stood outside the venue, her chest tight and her palms sweating, she realized she couldn't go inside. She spent the rest of the evening sitting in her car, feeling ashamed and defeated. It was in that moment that Sarah decided she couldn't keep living this way. Her sister Emily had long been encouraging her to seek professional help. Emily had seen Sarah's struggles firsthand and believed that therapy could offer her the support and guidance she needed. After the wedding incident, Sarah finally decided to take her sister's advice. She began researching therapists in her area and came across the name Dr. Vincent Vale. His profile stood out to her, his approach seemed compassionate yet practical, and his emphasis on helping clients create actionable plans for their mental health resonated deeply. Dr. Vale, a psychologist with over 15 years of experience, was known for his humanistic and solution-focused methods. He believed in meeting clients where they were, helping them unpack their struggles while equipping them with the tools they needed to move forward. His reputation as a trusted and empathetic professional had earned him a loyal client base, and Sarah felt a glimmer of hope as she dialed his office number to schedule her first session. As the day of her appointment approached, Sarah experienced a mix of emotions. She felt nervous about opening up to a stranger, but also relieved that she was finally taking a step toward addressing her anxiety. On the morning of her session, she arrived at Dr. Vale's office. A cozy space filled with warm lighting, bookshelves lined with psychology texts, and a calming scent of lavender. The environment immediately put her somewhat at ease, though her apprehension lingered. During their first meeting, Dr. Vale listened intently as Sarah shared her story. He didn't interrupt or rush her, allowing her to express her fears and frustrations fully. For the first time in years, Sarah felt truly seen and heard. Dr. Vale acknowledged the weight of her struggles, but also assured her that change was possible. He explained that anxiety, while challenging, could be managed and even reduced with the right strategies. His calm demeanor and reassuring words made Sarah feel like she was in good hands. Dr. Vale ended their session with a thought-provoking question. Sarah, if anxiety no longer controlled your life, what would it look like? This question lingered in Sarah's mind long after she left his office. It planted a seed of possibility, a vision of a future where she could wake up without dread, enjoy her work without feeling overwhelmed, and reconnect with the people she loved. It was the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. The first session with Dr. Vincent Vale was a pivotal moment for Sarah Cooper. She had entered the office feeling apprehensive, uncertain about what to expect. Therapy was new territory for her, and her anxiety was at an all-time high as she sat across from the seasoned psychologist. Dr. Vale, however, had a way of making his patients feel at ease. His calm demeanor, attentive gaze, and empathetic presence created an environment where Sarah felt safe enough to begin unpacking her struggles. As she recounted her daily experiences, Sarah's voice trembled. She spoke about her racing thoughts in the mornings, the overwhelming sense of dread before work, and the exhaustion that left her emotionally depleted by the end of the day. Her relationships, she explained, were suffering. She felt disconnected from her friends and family, often cancelling plans because the idea of social interaction felt unbearable. As she spoke, Dr. Vale listened intently, occasionally nodding or offering a gentle prompt to help her dig deeper. Dr. Vale ended their first session with a simple yet profound statement. Sarah, anxiety is not a reflection of who you are. It's a signal, a message from your mind and body asking for help. Together, we'll work to understand that signal and find ways to respond to it differently. Sarah left the office feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. For the first time, she had hope that things could change. Over the next few sessions, Dr. Vale guided Sarah through a process of self-discovery. He explained that anxiety often thrives on unresolved emotions, unhelpful thought patterns, and habitual behaviors. Together, they began identifying the underlying factors contributing to Sarah's struggles. Through their discussions, Sarah revealed that her need for control was a central theme in her life. As a child, her parents' tumultuous divorce had left her feeling powerless. The unpredictability of her family environment taught her to brace for chaos, leading her to develop hypervigilance as a coping mechanism. This need to anticipate and control every outcome followed her into adulthood, manifesting as anxiety. Dr. Vale helped Sarah recognize how these patterns were playing out in her daily life. For example, her obsessive checking of emails late at night wasn't just about staying on top of work. It was a way to avoid uncertainty. Her avoidance of social events wasn't laziness. It was fear of judgment and rejection. By shedding light on these behaviors, Dr. Vale allowed Sarah to see her anxiety not as a personal failing, but as a learned response to past experiences. With these insights, Dr. Vale introduced the concept of daily habits as a tool for managing anxiety. He explained that while therapy helps uncover the why behind anxiety, daily routines provide the how to move forward. At first, Sarah was skeptical. How could something as simple as a routine make a difference in the face of such a complex issue? But Dr. Vale broke it down for her. Routines create predictability, and predictability reduces the mind's need to anticipate danger. When the mind feels safe, anxiety decreases. They started small. Dr. Vale suggested Sarah begin with 3 foundational habits. Morning grounding practice. Spend 5 minutes journaling about her intentions for the day. Midday. Pause. Take a 10-minute walk outside to reset her mind. Evening. Wind down. Avoid screens for an hour before bed, replacing that time with a calming activity like reading or meditating. These habits, he explained, weren't meant to eliminate anxiety overnight. Instead, they were designed to gradually rewire Sarah's nervous system, creating moments of calm that she could build upon. Adopting these habits wasn't easy. Sarah often found herself falling back into old patterns, like scrolling through social media late at night or skipping her morning journaling when she was running late. During their sessions, she expressed frustration. "Why can't I just stick to this? It feels impossible sometimes." Dr. Vale reassured her that setbacks were a normal part of the process. He encouraged her to approach these moments with self-compassion rather than self-criticism. "Progress isn't about perfection," he told her, "it's about persistence." One breakthrough came when Sarah began tracking her habits in a journal. Each day, she rated how well she followed her routine and noted how she felt afterward. This simple act of reflection helped her see the connection between her habits and her mood. On days when she stuck to her routine, her anxiety was noticeably lower. On days when she didn't, it spiked. This realization motivated her to keep going. As Sarah continued to work with Dr. Vale, she experienced several aha moments that transformed her approach to anxiety. Anxiety as a wave. Dr. Vale taught her to view anxiety as a wave that rises and falls. By practicing mindfulness, she learned to ride the wave rather than resist it. Reframing thoughts. Sarah began challenging her catastrophic thinking. For example, when she caught herself thinking, "If I mess up this lesson, my students will lose respect for me," she replaced it with, "Everyone makes mistakes. It's how I handle them that matters." Self-care as a priority. Sarah realized that caring for herself wasn't selfish. It was essential. By prioritizing her well-being, she became more present and effective in her work and relationships. Through this journey, Sarah's perception of anxiety shifted. She began to see it not as an enemy, but as a messenger, one that she could listen to, learn from, and ultimately manage. The ultimate test of Sarah's progress came unexpectedly. It was an ordinary Thursday afternoon when she received an email from her school principal. The subject line read, "Conference Speaker Request," and as Sarah opened the message, her stomach sank. The principal had selected her to represent the school at the district-wide education conference, a prestigious event with over 200 attendees. She would need to deliver a 20-minute presentation on innovative teaching strategies in underserved communities. For many of her colleagues, this would have been a moment of pride and excitement. But for Sarah, it was a nightmare. Her mind instantly spiraled into worst-case scenarios. What if I freeze? What if I forget what to say? What if they think I'm incompetent? Her heart raced and her hands grew clammy as she sat staring at the email. Her immediate instinct was to decline, but something stopped her. Over the past few months, Sarah had worked tirelessly with Dr. Vincent Vale to confront her anxiety. She had adopted new habits, reframed her thinking, and begun to see progress. This presentation felt like the ultimate challenge, the moment where everything she had learned would be put to the test. She knew that avoiding it would only reinforce her fears, while facing it could be a chance to prove to herself how far she had come. Sarah scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Vale to talk through her fears. As she described the situation, her voice shook. "I can't do this," she admitted. "I'll embarrass myself in front of everyone." Dr. Vale leaned forward, his expression calm yet encouraging. "Sarah, this is an opportunity, not just to share your knowledge, but to confront the beliefs that have held you back for so long. Let's break it down into manageable steps." Together, they devised a plan. Visualization practice. Each night, Sarah would spend 5 minutes visualizing herself successfully delivering the presentation. She would imagine the sound of applause, the looks of engagement in the audience, and the sense of pride she would feel afterward. Breaking the presentation into chunks. Rather than memorizing the entire speech, she divided it into 3 main sections, each anchored by a personal story or example. This structure would make the content easier to recall and more engaging for the audience. Grounding techniques. Dr. Vale taught Sarah a breathing exercise to calm her nerves, inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4, and exhaling for 8. He encouraged her to practice this daily, as well as right before stepping on stage. Reframing fear. They worked on reframing her anxiety as excitement. The physical sensations are the same, Dr. Vale explained. It's how you interpret them that makes the difference. In the weeks leading up to the conference, Sarah practiced diligently. She rehearsed her presentation in front of a mirror, then to her sister Emily, and finally to a small group of colleagues. Each time, she felt her confidence grow. Still, as the conference date approached, the familiar whispers of self-doubt crept in. The morning of the conference arrived, and Sarah woke up with a knot in her stomach. She followed her routine to the letter: a brief journaling session, a light breakfast, and 10 minutes of mindful breathing. As she got dressed, she repeated an affirmation that Dr. Vale had taught her. I am prepared. I am capable. I will rise to the occasion. At the venue, the size of the crowd was intimidating. As Sarah waited backstage, she felt the rush of adrenaline coursing through her. Her hands trembled slightly, and she took a moment to ground herself with the breathing exercise. Dr. Vale's voice echoed in her mind. Remember, anxiety is a wave. Don't fight it, ride it. When her name was announced, Sarah stepped onto the stage. The bright lights and sea of faces were overwhelming, but she focused on the podium in front of her. Taking a deep breath, she began her presentation. Her voice wavered at first, but as she spoke, she found her rhythm. The personal stories she had woven into her speech resonated with the audience, and she could see nods of agreement and smiles of encouragement. Halfway through, she glanced at the clock and realized she was doing it. She was standing in front of hundreds of people, sharing her ideas with clarity and confidence. By the time she concluded, the audience erupted into applause. Sarah felt a surge of pride and relief, tears welling in her eyes as she stepped off the stage. That moment marked a turning point for Sarah. For years, she had allowed her anxiety to dictate her choices, avoiding situations that felt too overwhelming. But now, she had proof that she was stronger than her fears. The tools she had learned from Dr. Vale, the grounding techniques, the reframing of thoughts, and the power of routine had carried her through. Later that evening, Sarah reflected on the experience. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind a profound sense of accomplishment. She realized that the presentation wasn't just about sharing teaching strategies. It was about reclaiming her sense of agency. She had faced her greatest fear and emerged on the other side, more resilient and self-assured than ever before. The days following Sarah's successful presentation were filled with a quiet sense of pride and accomplishment. She still felt occasional pangs of anxiety, especially during moments of uncertainty or stress, but they no longer held the same grip on her. The transformation had been profound, not because anxiety had vanished entirely, but because Sarah had developed the tools to manage it effectively. She no longer avoided challenges. In fact, she started to see them as opportunities for growth rather than insurmountable obstacles. Sarah resumed social activities with friends, no longer cancelling plans out of fear of judgment or feeling unworthy. She felt more present in her relationships, able to engage with loved ones without the constant hum of anxiety in the background. Her mornings, which once began with dread, were now characterized by a sense of calm and intention. She woke up at the same time each day, engaged in her grounding morning routine, and set her intentions for the day ahead. It wasn't a perfect routine, but it was a consistent one, and that consistency helped her feel in control of her emotional state. The change in Sarah's life was not just external but internal as well. She had learned to acknowledge her anxiety without letting it define her. Instead of seeing it as a barrier, she began to see it as a signal, an indication of areas in her life where she could take action or exercise mindfulness. Sarah realized that anxiety, when approached with the right mindset, could be managed rather than feared. One of the most significant changes was her sense of self-compassion. She no longer berated herself for experiencing anxiety, but instead recognized it as part of her human experience. She learned to practice patience with herself, understanding that the journey to managing anxiety was ongoing and that setbacks were simply part of the process. Most importantly, Sarah no longer felt isolated in her struggles. She began to talk openly about her anxiety with her friends, which helped to destigmatize it and made her feel more connected. As Sarah's therapist, Dr. Vale had seen many patients struggle with anxiety, but Sarah's case stood out. She had come to him at a time when anxiety had already taken over so much of her life, her relationships, her career, and her overall sense of self. Yet, through their work together, Sarah had not only learned to manage her anxiety, but had also reclaimed her power. Dr. Vale reflected on Sarah's transformation with admiration. What Sarah has done is remarkable. She has not only learned to manage her anxiety, she has redefined her relationship with it. The true power lies in understanding that we can't always control our feelings, but we can control how we respond to them. He emphasized the importance of the tools Sarah had learned: routine, mindfulness, and self-compassion. These tools had become the foundation of her recovery, allowing her to navigate daily challenges without succumbing to the overwhelming force of anxiety. In Dr. Vale's eyes, Sarah's story was a testament to the power of patience, persistence, and the willingness to confront one's fears head-on. Anxiety doesn't define who you are, he explained in his reflections to the audience. It's a part of your emotional landscape, but it doesn't have to dictate the choices you make. You have the power to respond to it in a way that leads to growth and healing. Dr. Vale's message was clear. If Sarah could overcome her anxiety and transform her life, so could anyone. The journey was not always easy, and there would still be moments of doubt and fear, but with the right tools and support, lasting change was possible. To the audience, Dr. Vale posed a simple yet powerful question. What would your life look like if you could manage your anxiety the way Sarah did? How might your relationships, your career, or your sense of self change if you could navigate life's challenges with more clarity and confidence? He invited viewers to consider their own relationship with anxiety and reflect on how small changes, like implementing a simple daily routine or practicing mindfulness, could lead to significant improvements in their own lives. It's not about perfection, Dr. Vale continued. It's about progress. Every step forward, no matter how small, is a step toward a healthier, more fulfilling life. Many people feel overwhelmed by the idea of establishing a routine, especially when anxiety feels like a complex and insurmountable problem. Dr. Vale addresses this concern by explaining that routines don't need to be complicated to be effective. The goal is not perfection, but consistency. By making small, manageable changes, such as journaling for 5 minutes each morning or taking a 10-minute walk during the day, anxiety can be reduced gradually over time. Routine gives the mind structure, Dr. Vale explains, and structure helps us feel safer, which directly impacts our anxiety levels. This is a common objection for those who feel overwhelmed by daily responsibilities. Dr. Vale reassures viewers that a routine doesn't have to take hours. In fact, even just 10 to 20 minutes a day dedicated to mindfulness or grounding exercises can make a significant difference. The key is to find moments within the day to practice self-care, even if it means starting with a few small changes. Self-care doesn't have to be time-consuming, he says. It's about making your mental health a priority, even in small ways. The fear of failure can be paralyzing, but Dr. Vale emphasizes that failure is not the end of the journey. It's part of it. Growth doesn't happen in a straight line, he explains. There will be setbacks, but each time you get back on track, you reinforce your ability to manage your anxiety. He encourages viewers to treat setbacks as opportunities for learning, not as failures. Perfection isn't the goal. Progress is. Dr. Vale wraps up Sarah's story by highlighting the key takeaway. Small steps, when practiced consistently, can lead to profound change. Sarah's journey wasn't about completely eliminating anxiety. It was about learning how to manage it, to take back control over her life. If Sarah can do it, so can you, Dr. Vale says. You have the power to rewrite your relationship with anxiety. Start with one small change today and see where it takes you. He encourages viewers to reflect on their own lives and consider what small action they can take today to begin their journey toward a calmer, more empowered existence. Whether it's establishing a morning routine, practicing mindfulness, or reaching out for professional support, the first step is always the hardest, but it's also the most important. Remember, he concludes, anxiety doesn't define you. You are more than your fears. You have the ability to live a life filled with peace, purpose, and connection.